Ignorance is bliss, let me tell you. Um, I think you may want to know a little bit about where I was to kind of understand how this information that I'm sharing with everybody actually benefits you. My whole entire life experienced abuse. Was kind of on a search to gain knowledge to end this abusive experience. So I ended up researching an awful lot. I also ended up bouncing from one career to another career to another career. Um, was involved in hairdressing for some odd reason. I really loved working with hair. I was born bald. I was bald until I was 4 and grew up in the 60s, with the big hair. So, when I did grow hair, it was like 4 hairs that I tried to make into these big doos. It was pretty funny. So then the concept of, hey, be a hairdresser. And one of the things I love doing is um, sort of changing what you look like. How can I say this? If you how to look really, really great with what you've got. Because most of us, are beautiful human beings. We all are completely attractive beings, but we just don't know how to work it. So that's where I kind of got into hairdressing and ended up meeting so many people. And that's where I started being really bad at remembering names because I was meeting way too many people and I knew I wouldn't remember any names, so I didn't even bother trying. And then it kind of looks like I'm developing a bad memory when it actually was a personal choice because I only wanted to remember a face in the conversation. Anyways, that led to a lot of arm problems because hairdressing, you have to hold your hands up in the air all the time. And it ended up creating a lot of physical problems. So that wasn't the career for me. So I had to change. So that's basically what happened is, ended up being a stay-at-home mom, tried to find different careers that I can work at home because daycare was so expensive. Was driving a school bus, and I could bring my kids on this bus. But in the meantime, I was always studying something. I was always researching personal development. I kind of thought business is the way to go, so I researched a lot about business management, a lot about accounting, a lot about economic systems. But still, there was always this abuse. So there was more work being done on self-help areas, and then because I was raising kids and they were really into science, I got really focused on the sciences and then started getting really passionate about science, but more in the direction of how things work. So there's like 51 years of receiving so much friggin' information that when I had my big wake up call and I ended up finding out how corrupt all of the systems are, how all of them completely are dysfunctional, I had this massive wave of every piece of information that I received was sort of like put into this puzzle piece, that I could see this puzzle. I could see this massive big picture. And it came all at once. It was a really, really good example of how you receive information in a non-linear fashion. We are all linear beings. We hear one word after another word after another word, and we get lost in our words because you may say one sentence, somebody misinterprets that, and you don't get to say another sentence that explains the first sentence. how we communicate is so dysfunctional. It's like, do the Vulcan mind meld and then you'll see the same thing that I see, but we're not there yet. So part of, like, when I had what the world would perceive as a complete breakdown, it was like a complete pull together, like, but the world perceived me completely wrong. And what does that look like? It's this is the definition of genius and insanity. When you get so much information, you look like a friggin' insane person because you know something nobody else can comprehend. And frankly, because you can't comprehend it, it sounds a little insane to you. I had the experience that I wasn't getting sick. How did that come about? I was a mother of 4 kids with an abusive husband. I had no time to get sick. Everybody else around me was getting sick, but then I started keeping track of that because I love science, love statistics, love challenging myself, love observing things. So I started tracking how long it was since I got sick. So that kind of was, I need to prove some science on this. Do we really need to get sick? Ended up finding out some sciences that prove illnesses are basically an illusion. It's basically your roadmap to something ain't working in your life. You need to make a change, And if you don't make that change, if you can't get that awareness of what it is you're doing to yourself, you're gonna kind of kill yourself. But to see whether this bottled water concept works or whether this transformation shit works, you have to understand that I really, really did appear to the majority of the planet like I was going through a breakdown. And why? Because if I said something and anybody misunderstood me, I would get frustrated. I would get angry. Like, look at anybody that's homeless. It would create so much pain that, you would go for the drugs. You would go for an addiction to try and suppress that level of pain. So, I mean, this process, what it worked for me is obviously I'm a lot calmer now. Obviously, I'm not angry. Obviously, I can say something and not let a different opinion affect me. Um, I don't get so frustrated anymore. I don't get angry. And yet, that's what I would have looked like, is because you know all of this information and you're trying to let other people know about it, but they don't want to hear it. So that would make you really, really frustrated. So when you look at anybody that's homeless or anybody that's dealing with a mental illness, it's more of a communication problem. They see something that they can't communicate with the rest of the world in a way the rest of the world can understand and relate to it. Um, so that is what genius and insanity is that you know something the rest of the world doesn't know, but you don't know how to communicate that so that other people can understand what it is you're trying to say. Everything is about what you believe to be true, and it's next to impossible to change what other people believe if it happens to be working for them. So nobody will be able to judge whether this shit works or not unless you've seen where I was at when I was being perceived as hitting my rock bottom. My rock bottom was never my rock bottom. My rock bottom was like a rebirth. It was definitely a time that I needed to take a step back. Definitely was a time to work the problem and use these tools. But the biggest frustration that I get in trying to communicate is trying to understand what people actually know. Because when you do this much research and information, a lot of it feels like this is common knowledge. Everybody should know this stuff. So when I try and explain something, I kind of start off thinking, well, you know this is true, and because it's common knowledge. But it's not common knowledge. Nothing that's in this head is common knowledge to anybody. And that's kind of um, where I needed to start off from, is try to understand where everybody's awareness really is right now, and try to understand what does it take to share information from that perspective. So I kind of feel the best way of doing that is to make you see that I am no different than you. Most of us that are dealing with problems, I've dealt with problems too. I've dealt with the same things that you're dealing with. If what happened to me 50 years ago, I'd be locked up in an insane asylum. But, thankfully, a lot of people are in the same boat as me. And because you're in the same boat as me, you can kind of relate to what I'm talking about. The more you become homeless, the more you can start understanding what it's like to be homeless. And the more of us that are homeless together, the more of us can build a community of shared knowledge and understanding. And it's when you are like minded that you start feeling more comfortable. But the like mindedness of people that were in pain 50 years ago, or even 20 years, it's still going on today. Most of them are homeless, they are on the streets, they are heavily addicted to some form of drug that is definitely trying to suppress the pain because they're lacking the ability to communicate with the world so that they can be understood. I kind of seen that was the problem. Didn't want to go into the drug area. Although I did use marijuana, that was your best way of calming down. But I knew that that's designed more for a medication. Get yourself into a state. Examine your state at all times. Examine your challenges and look at the solutions to all of those challenges, and then you sort of find your way out. And so for those who might be judging, it's like, you should have seen me when I started off. Ignorance is definitely bliss. If I was ignorant, I'd be the same as everybody else and I'd fit in a lot better. But unfortunately, I filled his brain up with way too much information that nobody can comprehend, and somehow I gotta figure out a way of communicating so I can find that tribe to belong to. Peace out.